In today's lecture, we'll cover writing opinion columns, starting with the differences between news and feature stories and opinion columns, three types of opinion columns, the process of column writing, the column writing format, and finally, some tips for effective column writing. Writing an opinion column is a bit different than writing a news or feature story. I'll run down some features of each type of writing. The first is opinion. News and feature writing strives to exclude the writer's opinion, to present a fair, balanced, and neutral story. Opinion writing, as you can guess from its name, is filled with the writer's opinion. That's kind of the point. Now, the purpose of news and feature writing is to inform or to educate the reader, while the point of opinion writing is to provide the writer's perspective or to start a discussion. It's more persuasive writing than informative writing. News and feature writing are published throughout the newspaper, whether on the front page or in a news or feature section. Opinion writing, on the other hand, is reserved for the opinion page. Now, sometimes you will see an opinion column in the sports section, but they should always be clearly labeled as commentary. Now, this physical division is important. Newspapers aren't trying to trick readers by presenting an opinion column as a news story. Instead, they clearly separate opinion into its own section. Now, this division is eroded on the internet, so it's very important that newspapers label their sections online as well as in print, and that readers pay attention to that classification. Next up is language. The opinion page is the only page in the newspaper where first person or I language is acceptable. Now, second person or you language also works well in opinion writing. News and feature writing relies heavily on sources, whether they are interviews with people involved with the story or documents that provide evidence. Unfortunately, opinion writing can sometimes be held to a lower standard, and it isn't that uncommon to see an opinion column without any sources at all. Finally, who writes a news or feature story is generally irrelevant. Now, who writes an opinion column can be more important than what the column is actually about. Columnists write with a distinctive voice, often making a name for themselves as their publication that draws in readers regardless of what they write about from week to week. Now, you may recognize some of the names of these famous columnists: Mitch Albom with the Detroit Free Press, Dave Barry at the Miami Herald, Thomas Friedman from the New York Times, E.J. Dionne of the Washington Post, the late Roger Ebert from the Chicago Sun-Times, and Ann Coulter, whose work has appeared in multiple publications. In his book Inside Reporting, A Practical Guide to the Craft of Journalism, Tim Harrower divides opinion writing into three broad categories. The first category is topical commentary. This is the most popular and prolific form of opinion writing, where the writer uses a column to react with insights, outrage, or humor to current events, politics, and social controversies. Next is the personal reflection column, in which columnists use experiences from their personal life as universal truths that resonate with readers. Columnists share painful, poignant, and humorous insights into their families, friends, and social relationships in columns that read a bit like diary entries. And finally, there's the slice of life column, in which the columnist acts as a storyteller, roaming the streets, eavesdropping on ordinary folks, and capturing slices of everyday American life with dialogue and narrative. Now we'll go through the column writing process, which is similar to the feature writing process. You start with your idea, then your research, so you understand both sides of the argument. Now, the better you understand what you're talking about and what the other side thinks and feels, the better you'll be able to make your point. Next, you want to focus your column. Is your column going to explain an issue, to criticize an action, or to persuade your readers to accept a certain viewpoint? If you need to conduct any interviews, that is your next step. Next, you plan out your argument. And finally, you write your column, rewriting and revising as necessary. The format of a column is similar to the format of any other article. You start with the lead. Now, this is where you give information and background on your topic. Don't assume your readers are already familiar with the argument. You use the nut graph to succinctly state your opinion. Remember, that's usually the paragraph that follows your lead. Now, in the body of the column, you provide arguments to support your position, to explain why your opinion is right and what you expect your readers to do about it. Give just enough detail to support your arguments. And in the conclusion, you restate your opinion. In the next few slides, we'll dissect the opinion column, Sex Offenders Mingling with Minors, from the Voice student newspaper at Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland, Ohio. Now, this piece was a finalist for Best Editorial or Opinion Piece from the Associated Collegiate Press. Now, the lead is meant to provide background information on the topic. In this story, the writer starts by painting a picture of a sex offender sitting next to an underage girl in class, someone that sex offender has no business legally being near. The nut graph is again where the writer states an opinion. Now, it takes the writer a little bit to get to her point, which is that Cuyahoga Community College, or Tri-C, has the authority to and should implement a sex offender policy to protect underage Tri-C students from potentially dangerous classmates. In the body of the column, the author provides arguments and evidence to support her point. Now, the author provides a lot of evidence, including an interview with Tri-C's Vice President of Legal Services and a local high school principal. She also suggests implementing a policy similar to another community college which bans sex offenders with child victims from seated, but not from online classes. Now, the author restates her opinion in the column's conclusion. Again, the author restates why she believes that Tri-C should implement a policy to protect minors at her school from potentially dangerous sexual predators and fellow students. So how do you write a good opinion column? Here are some tips. Active voice is important in opinion writing, as passive voice can be seen as weak and uncertain, which doesn't lend itself to persuasion. Be sure to take a stand. Craft a strong thesis statement that urges action or invites reaction. Avoid broad, bland platitudes like support America or study both sides of the proposal. You'll want to stay focused. Poorly written opinion columns stray from their original argument, including details that don't support the thesis or confuse, or even worse, bore the reader. As I've already mentioned a few times, use research to support your arguments. Attack issues, but not people. Avoid name-calling and mudslinging. Don't resort to cheap shots that often just make you look petty. A column titled, "Why My Physics Teacher Deserves to Be Fired" has no place in a student newspaper or any newspaper. And finally, write a strong lead and a solid conclusion. Grab our attention with your lead and sum it up smartly in your final statement.